As always, we're up bright and early. Yes, we're your dependable, perfect morning starter. And we're right here live for you on Channels Television. Good morning. Welcome to the Morning Brief. I am Bukola Koka.
And I'm
Hi,
Jeffrey. Oh, okay. Hi, Bukola. Hi. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. We're counting down to Ondo governorship election. It's about, is it 48 hours now? Today's
48
Thursday.
hours. Today's Thursday.
48 hours. So I'm right. 48 hours from now, people of Ondo will be going to the polls to decide who leads them in the next 4 years. About 17 or so governorship candidates are up, are contesting for that exercise. So let's see how that plays out. But we hope you've been hanging in well and strong, because we know how biting, how hard the economy is. Our job, we'll continue to do our job on your behalf, and that is to remind the government that things are not going well, and we'll continue to do that until we fix our country. We have a responsibility, just you and I mean all of us have a responsibility to make sure this country works. Some will have to jack by, because they need to leave the country to just take a breather, some fresh air, but for those of us who choose to stay, we'll make sure we keep these guys on their toes to do the right thing so that all of us will be happy. We have only one country. This is Nigeria. I will make it work. Bukola?
Yes, indeed. And it appears as if, those in the corridors of power know that there's a buzzword, or there had been a buzzword in town, which was T-Pain. But they're trying now to change it. And, for good reason. The administration must work. Even Nigerians want the administration to work. And indeed, the ombudsman, that would be the press, wants the administration to work. So what seems to be the buzzword from about yesterday would be T-gain. And we hear you, NSA, we hear you. Crude oil production has shored up. And of course, the NSA is also letting us understand that the CBN is clean and there is no more excessive and illegal gains made off of Forex to the detriment of the Naira. But indeed, there's also a lot of challenges that have accompanied this administration. There's also the price of a bag of rice that has skyrocketed. Some would say selling for as much as 90,000 naira, 100,000 naira. There's also the pump price of petrol, and when that sector sneezes, every Nigerian catches cold. And the attendant inflation, of course, as a result of that, pushing, to the fringes of about 37%, and food inflation as well. So, dear NSA, we're appealing to the administration to also look into all of these areas such that Nigerians can rest easy. Of course, another catchphrase, which was made popular by Mr. President, by the way, is "let the poor breathe." But it's as if, the poor is suffering from congestion currently. Jeffrey.
Absolutely. So, I'm happy they are trying to change things and put out the narrative. But we're all witnesses of our own experiences. You can't use branding and positive thinking and optimism to change that. So as much as you do that, I'm happy that the numbers are going up, but how significant are the numbers? Right now, we should not be talking of anything less than 2 million barrels per day. We'll continue to remind the government that you're not doing enough. You may be doing things. That is not in question. I think if you're not a mindless critic, you see that the government is making efforts here and there. But moving the needle is the question, and we will not commend you for effort. We will commend you for results. I've written exams, all of us have written exams. You're not, when you assess, when you pass, it's because you did well, not because you sat down for the exam. So at the end of the day, as much as you're throwing these numbers at us, which we are grateful for, at least you're giving us data and information, as long as you're telling us, oh, it's temporary pain, whatever you want to convert it to is absolutely fine. But people are the witnesses of their own experience. And what does that mean? They step out, the next day you finish talking, and they say, how much is the price of egg? It's still the same. How much is the price of diesel? It's still the same. How much is transportation cost? It's still the same. Or the difference between what they bought before the government came in and now is still a very wide margin. Well, I'm sorry. That is they are witnesses of their own experiences, and until that changes, whatever you do is just for you. So do the best you can. We'll continue to support you as media to point in the direction that we should go as a country, and that is putting you on your toes to say people are still complaining. So do your best. Let our numbers, Bukola, I'm looking for a day where we'll go back to 2.3 million barrels. So OPEC doesn't count condensate. So sometimes when Nigerian government comes to say they've done 1.6 million barrels, 1.5, what that simply means is that it could be crude oil itself, maybe 1.2 or 1.1. The rest is condensate. Also, OPEC doesn't count that. I'm not saying condensate is useless, but that is how I calculate it. As soon as I see those numbers, I want to know what the portion is. I want us to go as high as 2.5, so that when we're counting condensate, it's just maybe 300 or 400,000 barrels, or however it's measured. But
Jeffrey, the most important thing, and that would be my own motto, personal motto, would be accountability. When we were making, gains that would be considered a fortune from crude oil, what did we do with it? Recall at that time, there was a back and forth between the executive at the federal level and the states over whether or not to spend, to save the gains or to distribute it. And, at the end of the day, where did that leave us? A continuous decline in our economic fortunes. At that time, we would say that things were better off then and now because there was no visionary leadership about where to take Nigeria to as a result of the economic gains that came through. And if we're not visionary, about where we're headed as a nation, even now, with those gains, some years from now down the line, we may not be able to account for the expenditure of the gains that are coming through from crude oil. And apart from that, what about prosecution of those who are found wanting, in the area of crude oil theft? So many loopholes that we can point to, about the management of our resources as a nation.
That's why we're looking at the EFCC gentleman to do his bit to bring these guys to account. I commend him. He's doing a lot with cybercrime, but that's easy to track. Small boys wreaking havoc on the internet. But go after the big boys. I'll continue to remind you. Go after the big boys. I'm sure we hired you to go after the big boys, not internet fraudsters. You can give that to your assistant to pursue. It's easy to track fraudsters on the internet. But the big boys that have ruined our country and brought us here that the president is trying to fix, find them. Send them to jail if they are guilty. As simple as that. So what do we have for the people today?
We have quite a lot, of course. The Ondo election is big on our mind. So we're assessing, the political and, the security concerns that may shape that exercise on Saturday. And we're hoping for, peaceful and credible polls. So we'll have civil society organizations to tell us their thinking, because already they are camped in Ondo State, Akure, the state capital, for an assessment of the exercise.
Yes, so civil society, security agencies should be joining us sometime on the program to bring us up to speed. How ready? Remember that they are the ones, the politicians you're seeing on your screen were signing peace accord. How much of adherence will be seen as far as this exercise is concerned? So that will be a big talking point on the program today. Besides that, remember also that today is World Diabetes Day. We will be talking about that as well. Creating awareness for the people that have this challenge in their health, and also to educate others not to, get to avoid it as much as they can by the choices they make in terms of lifestyle. So the people that are responsible in the know that will be helping us today, they'll be here to break it down for us. What is diabetes besides what you know from your internet or personal experience? And especially the issue of access to drugs for these people.
Access to treatment.
They are citizens. We have to take care of them.
Indeed. And let me help Jeffrey with this one. The Super Eagles take on the Cheetahs of Benin Republic.
Oh, dear.
We'll take a peep into what to expect from that match. Of course, you and I know that the Eagles will not disappoint. The Eagles are going to demolish the Cheetahs, right, Jeffrey?
Absolutely, that's the hope. So it's going to be happening in Côte d'Ivoire later tonight, about 8 p.m. or so.
I'm going to watch that match.
Yeah, you should watch that match. So you have something to see. You understand?
Tell me about it, Jeffrey.
Super Eagles against the Cheetahs of Benin Republic is going to be happening in Côte d'Ivoire later tonight. So we're joined by sports analysts who will bring us up to speed as to the level of preparations, what we should expect in terms of fixtures, plan, game plan, and all of that. AFCON 2025 is up for grabs. I'm sure we'll be there. And we missed it in Cote d'Ivoire earlier in the year. We cannot miss it this time.
No way.
We have a star-studded team. Our boys are good, skillful, rich. Come on now. Anyhow
we must bring the trophy home.
Anyhow you go.
In 2025.
All right, so
the men, not the boys.
No,
now.
men them.
Yes.
Men them.
They have our support all the way. So we're going to be here, providing all of the camaraderie, all of the solidarity that they need. Speaking of which, what's your prediction for tonight's match? Is it 4-0? Are we going to spell the Republic?
It's Guerrero we're talking about here.
Yeah, and he knows us, right?
Yeah,
former family member. Don't worry.
He has a pound of flesh he's looking for every other day.
So we won't give him any breathing space.
Don't worry. We'll talk about that just after we bring you up to speed with what you've been talking about on social media. Don't forget, CTV Morning Brief is a hashtag rather you can talk to us through. Just go to X, our social media of choice, and just hashtag CTV Morning Brief. Share your thoughts. We'll amplify it right here on the show. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll bring you our top stories. Join us again.
The National Security Advisor, Malam Nuhu Ribadu, has warned the new Islamic sect in the northwest, known as Lakrawa, that their days are numbered if they do not desist from acts of terrorism. Speaking at the opening ceremony of the Comptroller General of Customs Conference in Abuja, Mr. Ribadu says nobody dares President Bola Tinubu and gets away with it, and insists that the terrorist group have come at the wrong time, vowing that they will be kicked out of Nigeria.
We are beginning to see the gains, what we call Tinubu gains. Hundreds of bandits are killed today, every day. Tinubu gains. You move everywhere in our own country today, free of fear. Tinubu gains. Things are changing. These so-called Lakura or whatever you call them, they are making a mistake. Nobody ever dares Tinubu and win. Nobody. They have come at a wrong time. Nobody has ever defeated Tinubu. And you are going to be defeated. And we'll kick you out of Nigeria. One after the other. Things will change in our country. And it's already changing. Many parts of our country today is living in peace. Go to the Niger Delta. Things have changed. Today, we have gotten to 1.8 million barrels of crude oil. We have not seen this for a long, long time. Tinubu gains. Beginning little by little, this welfare to the rich is stopping, is coming to an end in Nigeria. Special things going to the very rich, no more. Central bank is clean. Nobody is making one dime in our central bank, unlike up to 2023. Tinubu gains. And the Naira will be stabilized. It will be stabilized. Tinubu gains. And it's happening all over. We are just 1 year, 7 months. Let them wait and see 2025. It will happen. We will secure this country. We will fix it.
And security now. Unidentified gunmen have reportedly killed 2 soldiers attached to the Joint Task Force Southeast Operation Udoka along Umuahia Owerri Road in Umuahia South local government area of Abia State. Confirming the attack to Channels Television in a statement, Lieutenant Colonel Jonah Unukalu of the Joint Task Force Southeast Operation Udoka blamed the attack on the indigenous people of Biafra and its armed affiliate, the Eastern Security Network. And away from that, the Minister of the FCT, Mr. Nyesom Wike, says the People's Democratic Party, PDP, in River State is united. The former River State governor stated this during a media parley with some select journalists in Abuja. This comes amid the ongoing rift between him and his successor, Governor Simlai Fubara.
PDP has never had it this bad in terms of leadership, particularly from the chairman of the Governors Forum. And I knew it would be so.
That's Bala Mohammed.
Of course. Of course. Let me tell you, leadership is not by mouth, it's not talking. He's the governor is the chairman of Governors Forum. How has he mobilized his colleagues? As far as I'm concerned, apart from what Sheyi is doing, and with his brother Osun State, Adeleke, I see no galvanization for PDP to win Ondo State. Yes, it's correct. It is not as if PDP cannot put their hands together. But it's this personal ambition. This attitude that I must bring wicked down. And when you have all your attempt is to bring wicked down, you make mistake.
Away from politics now, civil society organizations are calling for more financial transparency in the area of defense spending and appropriations. The program's manager of the Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, CISLAC, made this call during the unveiling of a report on balancing military professionalism with military commercial interests.
Defense and security sector themselves, they get the allocation from National Assembly. And if you receive the allocation from National Assembly, you are meant to be accountable for whatever every penny that you received. You cannot tell me that everything in other defense and security sector, I cannot ask questions on every penny. No, I understand there's some kind of critical area that I cannot even interrogate, because of national security concern. But not all of them, are really, that are germane to that length. There are some that we can interrogate, we can ask questions around, we begin to also get some kind of a response because it's our money, it has to be our money. So we also look at the issue of what do you call, financial. Financial is that of spending now. Spending, how do they spend? There are a lot of interest of defense and security sector. Yeah, I'm talking about the commercial interest.
The Jigawa Command of the Federal Fire Service has responded to the distress call, dispatching FFS-20 to the scene of a fire incident and worked effectively to control the blaze, preventing any fatalities, although one minor injury was reported. In an official statement, the Public Relations Officer of the Jigawa Command commended the rapid response team and coordination of the firefighting team, urging all drivers and transport companies handling combustible materials to prioritize vehicle maintenance and adhere strictly to safety guidelines. And more on fire outbreaks. A massive fire broke out at the Eco Fitness Hub Center in the Gwarimpa area of Abuja, the nation's capital. Spokesperson of the FCT Emergency Management Department, Nkechisa, said the fire was contained by emergency officials. She also stated that there was no casualty from the incident, but most of the fitness equipment at the gym were destroyed by the fire. And now to the economy. The Nigeria Customs Service, NCS, has announced a revenue collection of 7 trillion naira of November 12, 2024. The Comptroller General of the Nigeria Customs Service, Mr. Adewale Adeniyi, disclosed this on Wednesday at the ongoing 2024 Comptroller General of Customs Conference in Abuja. According to him, the revenue exceeded its target for the year by 10%.
The Nigeria Customs Service has hit its 2024 revenue target of 5.07 trillion. This exceptional performance, projected to exceed our target by about 10%, validates our partnership-driven approach to revenue collection and trade facilitation.
And Nigeria Super Eagles will take on Benin Republic today in match day 5 of the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers at the Stade Felix Houphouët-Boigny. The game, which will kick off at 8 p.m. Nigerian time, will see star striker Victor Osimhen return to the side after an injury layoff. There are high expectations as far as that match is concerned, which will hopefully be fulfilled. And outside our shores, an Argentine appeal court has appealed the corruption conviction of ex-president Cristina Kirchner, who was sentenced to 6 years in prison and declared ineligible to hold elected office in 2022. Kirchner, who was president from 2007 to 2015, can appeal her conviction for fraudulent administration to the Supreme Court. The 71-year-old was convicted over the awarding of public works contracts while as president, but claims she was the target of a political witch hunt. So much to learn about the judiciary in that country, with its ability to uphold the law and prosecute successfully, a highly placed individual, no matter the interests concerned. But what are you saying about some of the big stories making headlines? Jeffrey joins me now for a review of those stories. Absolutely.
So, Bukola will get straight to this conversation that they've been talking about. But I'll listen to the EFCC boss. No, not EFCC. NSA. It's nobody dares Tinubu and wins. I was just like, okay. I like that optimism at the end of the day. But the idea is not about the president. It's about the Nigerian state. I think that should be a better way to put it.
Yeah.
I know perhaps he was excited with all sense of respect. It's a Nigerian state that anybody should dare. So whether you're Lakarua or Boko Haram or ISWAP, you don't dare the Nigerian state. Our military will be up to their responsibility by the grace of God if you give them all they have, because we've heard that these guys, they are really good.
Well, Jeffrey, we understand that some things are just political statements, and when we don't see evidence, there's no reason for us to get excited about them.
Political statements should not be coming from the NSA. That was a political statement. So that's my 2 cents on that particular issue. But let's talk about what you have been talking about. And that has to do with the revelation by the EFCC boss, Mr. Olukoyede, saying that the level of corruption in the power sector will make you cry. That is what he said. You know, I always talk about this gentleman every time, because I feel that he holds a lot in terms of responsibility to the Nigerian state to help us, stop people that are stealing our commonwealth, to deter them, if you will. So we need more action. So when I hear things like this, not really too impressed. Let's get to the matter. Before we start crying, get the people that are making us to cry at the end of the day. So this is what you're saying. Ibrahim Umar said, it's truly heartbreaking for a country with such potential. It's tragic that so much is siphoned away while millions still lack reliable electricity.
A Free Farm said corruption in Nigeria involves bribe taking, embezzlement, fraud, and nepotism, significantly impacting governance, economic development, and public trust, despite various anti-corruption efforts.
Oh, look at this statement. That is from Chief Emmanuel on corruption in Nigeria's power sector, while highlighting a critical issue might ring hollow to many Nigerians unless accompanied by tangible action. That's exactly what I mean. The EFCC under its leadership should indeed focus on systemic corruption. Start with high-profile cases like that of Yahya Bello. Get him to court, according to... Let the man decide, fight for his life, whether he's guilty or not.
Let him defend the allegations leveled against him, and let's see whether indeed he is innocent.
Let me complete the guy's
guilty. As Jeffrey says, go after the big guys, and that's when we'll know that indeed the FCC is working for Nigerians. I mean, the money at stake is public funds, is taxpayers' money that should go into development.
So this guy completes by saying, whose alleged financial misdeeds have been a topic of public concern. So I'm going to hold the EFCC chairman responsible yet again. You're the one saying the level of corruption will make us cry. That means you have facts, you have evidence to make sure anybody who committed those crimes or stole or made us, as brought us here in the power sector, you have facts. That's why it can make us cry. So go after them. If you don't go after them, that's two. We have the issue of Yaya on you. We now have the issue of power sector. Is it sabotage now? Anyway.
And, there may also be need for, the EFCC to look into ministries, departments, and agencies as well. There may be a lot of corruption going in there. And, in fact, into that space at the state level. Remember the report from Budget, saying that 58% of funds allocated to the health sector were unspent. So what happened to those funds?
Okay, let's race as much as we can, because we have a lot to talk about today on the program. Still power sector, the Minister of Power says, that's Mr. Adelabo, that it needs $10 billion in terms of investment to have 24-hour electricity. I just say he's saying the truth, but truth is bitter. Nothing comes out of nothing. The power sector needs a huge investment to achieve constant power. Bukola, you have the next one.
And Baby Jacob is the next user who says, this is just the reason behind the collapse of national grid every AK market day. Every AK market day.
Adamu says, break how you plan to spend the $10 billion on electricity. on what? Give analysis on how this spending will give 24-hour electricity to Nigerians.
Now, if a huge allocation has gone to the electricity sector, this year alone, and only 4% is for personnel management, then the EFCC is saying something that we should all be paying attention to. How have the rest of the funds been disbursed? Let's go to the next talking point, something for everyone to chew on. Ipman announces fuel price slash by 50 naira.
You know what?
Are you excited?
I'm not, actually. But at least, to say half bread is better than buff. Well,
James is the first user. James says, can you imagine? Yes, can you imagine? What will the reduction of 50 naira do for us? It's as good as not even reducing anything from its original price now.
All right,
I remember buying petrol 2 days ago for 1,050 naira per litre, and it didn't make any difference at all.
James says, can you imagine what will reduction of 50 naira do for us? It's as good as not even, okay, you read that. To me, this is not slash. You met petrol price at 195 and the price now is between 1.2 to 1.3. I will believe it's indeed slash or reduction if the price can go down to 190 or lower than that. I'm sorry, I'm laughing.
Were horses. Well,
okay.
and Olu is the last user here. Olu says 50 naira is actually too minute. Only 50% reduction is worthy of the term slash.
Okay, because this is what we'll do. We have a lot that our guys, our producers have given to us to do with the issue of what people have been talking about, and we need to look for we need to look for a way to capture all of them. But maybe we'll just get straight to that very first conversation that has to do with sports today. But let's get to that. Okay, let's get to that one first, because we have a lot packed on the show, from Ondo to sports to
World Diabetes Day.
So perhaps as time allows us, we're going to come back to the trends to bring you up to speed with what you've been talking about, so we can accommodate as many things as possible. But the Super Eagles are up against the Cheetahs of Benin Republic this evening. I think about 8 p.m. I'll check the time. It's the AFCON qualifiers. I know right here on the show we love to support our Super Eagles. Sports journalist Adebayo Sulaiman, they know him as Puja, joins us. So yes, those are the boys. Yes, getting ready, training, I guess, last night. So we're going to be joined by Puja on the program to bring us up to speed with what the level of preparation is.
And Puja, by the way, is in Abidjan.
No, it's in Lagos, Nigeria.
Oh, it's in Lagos.
It's in Abuja. Okay, Puja, we're confused as to where you are. So let's begin with you. Puja, welcome to the program.
I was confused for a moment. You know, you're usually in Abidjan.
You're always with the boys.
Days to the match. So we're wondering why you're not there right now.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I'm not in Abidjan. I'm actually in Lagos because they were playing Rwanda in Uyo on Monday. So I'll be traveling tomorrow to Uyo for their arrival back to Nigeria for the last qualifying game against Rwanda on Monday.
So let's get to the business of that will be happening tonight in Côte d'Ivoire as far as this is concerned. So give us an outlook of the level of preparations, because as people like Bukola who, you know why? When they look at the plenty names and the big boys, they feel like, come on. Bukola has been giving us big predictions. When she hears Osimhen, Boniface, all of these guys, Ademola Lookman, our incoming CAF footballer of the year, I don't know, let me sound like a politician, incoming. Bukola feels like this should be like 5-0. So,
yes,
but you are the expert here. Walk us through what we should be expecting as far as this match is concerned in terms of the technical preparations.
Well, it's a good one for Nigeria, for the first time, in a long time. These players got to camp as early as possible. As at Tuesday night, everybody, it was full house for the Super Eagles. Every player called up was in town in Côte d'Ivoire. And it looks like they really mean business. But if you look at Benin Republic, they are not pushovers. Remember, they defeated us in this Côte d'Ivoire during the World Cup qualifiers under Guinea-Bissau. They beat us 2-1. And then when they came to Nigeria, we defeated them. So it's more like a balanced game. And for Benin Republic, they need a point as well to secure them, maybe to finish second on the log. And then, of course, we need just 1 point from these two games to qualify for AFCON in Morocco next day. So it's not a pushover, kind of game. But, of course, I can tell you that the boys are ready. The big boys are in town. Osimhen is back into the squad. Ademola Lookman is fine on all cylinders. Boniface is scoring. So it looks like a balanced and a well, prepared team. And by 8 o'clock today, we'll see if the training and of course the talk from these players come to pass on the pitch of play.
Now, Pooja, especially because of that worry that they beat us in the last championship and the fact that they're being coached by Gernot Rohr, who was our coach at one time and who knows us very well. In fact, some would say that he gave us the 3-5-2 formation. So should we be worried that this is a former family member that knows, all the locations of our furniture and everything that is important about our approach to play?
Okay, we listened to the press conference of the coach yesterday, Austin Gilmore. He said, as much as Gernot Rohr knows us, we know him very well as well. So it's a balanced, game for both parties. He knows us very well. I must confess to you, he gave most of these players their debut as players, even when he was coaching Nigeria. Mm-hmm. So we know him very well as well. We defeated him in the last qualifier. And the boys know the coach very well. They know his tactics, they know his reasoning, they know his philosophy, they've adapted well under him, during when he was coaching Nigeria. So it's a big game for him as well because they need points at home because they can't play in Benin Republic because of the stadium. But they've been doing well in Cote d'Ivoire. Remember, they defeated Rwanda here the last time they played. The last time they played the Super Eagles there as well, they defeated us in the World Cup qualifier. So he knows us very well. He knows how to play us. Even in Uyo last time we played in the AFCON qualifier, it was a big game. It took the intelligence of Ademola Lookman and of course Victor Osimhen to give us that victory. So we need them again. We need the players to come to practice again to show Gernot Rohr that even if he knows us very well, we can do the business in Cote d'Ivoire.
All right, Pooja, let's talk about the formation. What's the formation we're using and how is it going to be this time? Because some coaches do static formation. So if we go 4-4-2, 3-5-2, whatever formation we choose, we stick to it. But some have a progressive formation, depending on how the opponent approaches them. What's the Guavon style on this particular one from what you see and what you've experienced?
I think Guavon is a manager that is trying to adapt to the team. He wants the players to understand his philosophy because we know quite well that these are the last two games in the AFCON qualifier and we have the big one in March, talking about the World Cup qualifier. So he will stick to his formation. I think that has worked for him very well. The 3-4-3 formation, 3 at the back and 4, pack the midfield. And of course, play, the guys from the flanks to play, to service the guys. And because Osimhen is back into the team, I think that will be the best. Because we need Osimhen in that front line. I think, Victor Boniface, who have not scored an international goal for the Super Eagles, you have to be on the bench. And of course, you have the likes of Simon Moses and Ademola want to service Victor Osimhen. So I think it's going to be a 3-4-3 formation, which of course has given him enough results in this qualifier. So I don't think it's going to change his pattern. It's going to change his philosophy because the players need to understand his philosophy going forward because, like I said, the biggest game that we have to face will be in the World Cup qualifier. And remember, we are playing Rwanda and Benin Republic also in the World Cup qualifier. So we need to know how to play them in this AFCON qualifier because we are playing them again in the World Cup qualifiers.
Speaking of Guavon, looking at his strides, do you think he's getting more comfortable and confident at the job? And, his mistakes in the past can be forgiving and then he can be giving the job. Also considering, the words of Captain William Troost Ekong, speaking to how comfortable the men, them, according to Jeffrey, are beginning to feel with Coach Guavon.
I think, the assistant of Guavon has been good, under the Super Eagles. He took us to Cameroon during the, AFCON in Cameroon, and we did well. Unfortunately, we lost out to Tunisia. And the players understand his game very well. And I think, this is the time for us to prepare well for the big one in March. And for the players, like I said, for the first time in how many years now, the second day of camp opening, all the players were in camp. Tuesday, it was full house, and it shows the commitment of the players under Guavon. And I don't think NFF want to change that pattern or want to bring another manager who will not have any game, in quotes, any game to actually understand these players before the World Cup qualifiers. So now that we have 10 points, we've considered less goals in the team, and we have 2 teams in this same group that will be playing in March. I think, of course, it's a no-brainer. Guavon have to continue as the head coach of the Super Eagles. Remember, these 2 games is just more like a competitive friendly. We need just 1 point to qualify for AFCON. So the players know the players know the manager very well, and I think Gabon knows his onions, and he wants the job as well. Nobody wants to be called interim manager, so he wants to be called the coach of the Super Eagles. So I think after the AFCON qualifier, they have to sit together and find a way to make him the new manager of the Super Eagles.
And any eventuality should be seen independently and not be weighed against his mistakes, right?
I don't think so.
All right, Puja, I'm happy the boys recovered psychologically from what happened in Libya, and at least we got 3 points and 3 goals that we didn't score at the end of the day. So I know Benin Republic, they're not listening to us right now, so maybe you share with us what are our weaknesses and what is their strength and how we can capitalize on it.
They have one of the best strikers, and they have the goalkeeper that will be imposed for them is the goalkeeper of Raymond Stars, Obasa Adebi. Of course, his coach is actually the assistant coach of the Super Eagles as well, talking about Daniel Gumodede. So he knows the goalkeeper very well. So I think he's going to tell the likes of Simi and Ademo look on his weaknesses as well when it comes to being in the post. And if you look at the first game as well, I think where we park the midfield, the 4 players in the midfield is actually the biggest strength for Iguava. Because it is now playing very well. We have Frank Oyeka in the middle of the park. We have Alex Iwobi. And it looks like that is what it's going to do again against Benin Republic. So their weakness is actually their defense line. Remember in the last game, they played, they played so well, from the front line, but when it comes to their defenders, they are actually very weak. And they said, Iguava committed to the world and said they just have the best attack in the world, and it's not out of place to actually say that as well. So their defense is weak. They have the goalkeeper that we know very well. And I think the players are ready for tonight and ready to actually qualify for that qualifiers today in Cote d'Ivoire.
Puja, share with us your predictions.
It's a win for the Super Eagles. You are talking about we got 3 points and 3 goals against Libya. If we have opened that game, we have defeated them fair and square. So I think this time around that we're going to Cote d'Ivoire. We know the Felix Stadium very well. Remember, we got to the final, and Felix Stadium was actually like a second home for the Super Eagles during the AFCON qualifier in Cote d'Ivoire. So the players know very well. Osimhen is back. You remember in the first game against the Republic, it wasn't there. The last qualifier again, it wasn't there. So this is the first time Victor Osimhen is going back to that Felix Stadium. And if you know the combination of Ademola Lookman and Victor Osimhen in that stadium, I think it's home and dry for the Super Eagles. I think we are going to defeat them, and it's going to be a clean sheet.
And the fan response, is it going to be a neutral ground, for the Super Eagles, really? Or do you see loyalties dividing because, 2 other African countries besides the home country is playing?
It's going to be like home away from home from the Super Eagles. Like I said, the Felix Stadium is actually like the second home of the Super Eagles. During the, AFCON in Cote d'Ivoire, I think we played 3 matches at that stadium, and they love us very well. The only bad thing is we played Cote d'Ivoire in the final. So now this time around we're not playing Cote d'Ivoire. So they love our football, and we got to the final in Cote d'Ivoire, and it's going to be more fans of the Ivory Coast to the Benin Republic. So it's going to be home away from home, and I think the players have to come to party and secure that ticket tonight in Cote d'Ivoire.
All right, Suleiman Adebayo, always a delight talking to you. Puja, we'll get to see how things play out. I'm happy we're just looking for 1 point. So if Umar Bale has to crawl to get that point, we'll have to crawl and get that point as much as possible. Thank you so much for coming on the program. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, so, after today, which is about 8 p.m. or so, we'll head to Uyo on Monday
for the encounter with Rwanda.
And let's see how that plays out. But we're not done yet, so let's bring you up to speed with some of the things we did promise. So let's keep to our promise now. Some of the things they are talking about, Bukola, on X, which has to do with the revelation that 6 million Nigerians face existential threats as cost of diabetes care skyrockets in the country. So Uche Okoro is the first person to talk about this. Says, I want to read from here. This is absolutely heartbreaking. Diabetes care is not a luxury. It's a necessity. The fact that so many Nigerians are being priced out of the care they need, is a shameful indictment of the broken system. Nigerians can't just sit back and watch as lives are lost due to greed. They need to raise their voices, support the organizations fighting for change, and hold those responsible accountable.
And Dr. Sunday is the next user. Dr. Sunday says, diabetes is a metabolic disease that has no cure, hence we manage. This aspect is what is worth looking into to give every DM patient, diabetes mellitus, I believe is DM patient, hope. The association too should present these types of issues to the government via the Commissioner of Health in their individual states.
All right, amazing nature. You say, to those who don't care of maybe for their health now, that's what you wanted to say. You can see, improve your diet intake. Don't eat everything that you see. That sounds like a message to a lot of people.
Particularly diabetes patients. Yeah.
All right,
so we have one more talking point before we go on break.
Yes, that has to do with something that happened in Imo State. We understand allegedly policemen shooting carelessly. Yes, okay, that's the video from Imo State. Let's see. Okay, yeah.
Does the video is the video accompanied by sound, or it's just?
Let's see. So the policemen were saying they were shooting carelessly. They said the policemen were shooting carelessly at a Mercedes-Benz car.
Yeah, so there's sound.
Okay. All right, so Clinton, this is your first response. How can they be using a car without a police label on it? It feels like they are kidnappers with uniforms.
And you just to say that the video is accompanied by sound, and we could hear the sound of the gunshot in that video. So this was actually captured, so nobody would say that it's the word of the person alleging against the police. Anyway, the next user says, and is Dr. Izu says, once they're in possession of rifles, they assume there's some type of god to play with lives. They should be brought to the law. If someone had died, the news will cap it accidental discharge. What type of training? And this person is just lamenting, the approach of the force to policing. We bring these issues to the fore time and again, and just to say that it may not be the practice everywhere across the country. We know that there are some responsible police officers.
There are a lot of responsible police officers. I know some of them. But I was smiling because policemen and Benz, I don't know. Anyway, let's just go away from all of that. So we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll start our very first conversation. 48 hours from now, Ondo people will go out to the polls to decide who they will vote for as the next governor of the state. That's the first conversation we'll be having today on the program. Join us again. All right, welcome back. 48 hours from now, the people of Ondo State will head out to the polls to decide who will be their next governor. 17 people are contesting for the governorship seat in Ondo State. And that's why we're having this particular conversation, to take a look at the level of preparations from all sides. So we're being joined in the program by the Commissioner of Police in Ondo State, CP Abayomi Oladipo, joins us via Zoom from Akure. CP, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on the program.
All right, we also have joining us still from Akure, because everybody's literally on ground to make sure this happens and everybody is effective to deliver on that particular day. Executive Director of Programs, Director of Programs rather, of Yaga Africa, Cynthia Bamalu. Cynthia, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you and good morning.
Cynthia, I almost mistaken you for a politician for a moment, but you're not, I know. All right, CP, let's start with you, CP, because I know you have a very busy schedule, actually both of you, because I know there are pressers later in the day. CP, maybe you bring us up to speed as to the level of preparations in terms of the security agencies led by the police, which is actually the frontline security agency for this particular exercise, because Amboteku, every other corps has been banned, and it's only the Nigerian police that is statutorily responsible for this exercise. Give us an assessment of the level of preparation, CP.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning once again. Our plans is beyond our planning now. We are now putting action and effect to the plans we have made in the last couple of weeks. As I speak, we have commenced deployment of material and assets of the force, both the ones that belong to the states and the ones deployed courtesy of the Inspector General of Police, IGP Adeolu Egbetokun, PhD, MPM. As I speak, tactical teams from the force headquarters have joined us in the states to support us to provide security during this election period. We have the support of the other agencies that I'm quite aware that their personnel and materials are already in the States. We are able to have this luxury because this is an off-cycle election, and I'm sure the eyes of the world is focused on Ondo State. We have done our threat analysis of the 18 local government areas of the state, and we have simulated it with the ones submitted to us by INEC, DSS, and the Force Intelligence Department. To be quite honest with you, we are good to go, and I can tell you that the people of Ondo State will have free atmosphere to perform their civic responsibility. Thank you.
All right, CP, so let's put a bit of facts now. How many policemen are deployed to Ondo State for this particular exercise? I know you said you've done your threat assessment. Also, where are the places that the police is actually concerned? I know everywhere is your jurisdiction, but like in every other election, in every other state, there are places that are of serious concern, and what you intend to do before we now get to Cynthia's responses.
Okay, thank you. The planning deployment for those who will be at the 3,933 polling units spread across the 3 senatorial zones and 18 local governments of the state. We are deploying, apart from other agencies that will support us Police will be deploying over 15,000 to the polling units, which will be supported by other sister services in the states. As per the threat assessment, we have focus on the whole state. However, our attention is more focused on Idori local governments, or local governments, some parts of Ose local governments. Those are the critical areas, and of course, Ilaje, Ondo local governments. For Akoko, we have some areas that we have eyes on, but I can tell you that the whole state is our area of focus. Thank you.
Let me now go to the program's director for Yaga Africa, Ms. Cynthia Mbamalu, who also joins us from Akure. Thank you for joining us on the program. According to reports, there's an unusual tranquility that has characterized this round of electioneering campaign for the 2024 Ondo governorship election, unlike what had obtained in the past in 2020 and in 2016. We understand that you're already in Akure. What sense are you getting about the atmosphere ahead of Saturday's exercise, about what is responsible for this unusual calm?
Thank you and good morning again. Interestingly, this was one of my observations when I came into the state, and I was wondering, do we really have governorship elections here? Because you had this unusual calm across some parts of the local government. We had trained our observers across the 18 local governments in the state. So even at the local government level, so even beyond the capital or the LGAs bordering the capital, you would also experience that level of calm or tranquility, like you call it. And I think there are several factors contributing to that. And one of it from our pre-election assessment indicates that there's been this low voter enthusiasm to engage the electoral process this time around. And so even the conversations, unlike in Edo where you go to communities, people are talking about the elections. Here, you don't even have you move around, you don't have a lot of conversation around the elections. You don't have a lot of conversations on the politics in the state media houses, state-based media and media houses, and we're seeming to experience a lower interest in elections on the part of voters. So that's one. And the second, there's also the conversation around the question of trust. And so you have some voters, when you ask them, they just tell you, we don't know what these elections, we're not sure what the outcome would be, but we don't also trust the process. So we're not even interested in participating because we're not sure our votes would count. And so when you have this level of low enthusiasm on the part of the people to engage the process, it also affects the political tempo or the tempo of the political campaigns in the state. And so that's from our assessment, that is one of the observations we're seeing across board. The second is also the engagement with the political parties. One, we had late commencement of campaigns in Ondo State. In fact, a lot of the political public campaigns, we had a lot more of them from October 15th. So a lot more later. If you think about the fact that the new Electoral Act allows campaigns to begin about 90 days to the election, so you're expecting that from August, September, you have you see political campaigns, rallies, activities, community engagement going on. But we observed that we had late commencement of political public campaigns. There were conversations going on some social media platforms, but when you think about the major activities that you see to give you that sense of we're having elections here, we saw a late commencement of that. So that may also have contributed to the supposed tranquility. Now, I'm not saying that peace or tranquility is not good. We need that peace and tranquility. We're just saying the political tempo. So perhaps the word to use is the usual excitement and the gyrations and the rallies and all you see and the debates happening in market, in newspaper stands or marketplaces and community halls around the elections that you usually see. We're seeing very little of that. So I think the other thing was the late commencement. Perhaps the third factor may also be lethargy. I think a lot of people are getting tired. We almost have elections every year in Nigeria. And for a state like Ondo that has off-cycle elections, they were just through with their presidential and presidential and legislative elections last year. And now this year again, we have elections. We just came in from Edo. We had 3 off-cycle last year. And then there also some by-elections that have been going on. And so if you think about that, it's also that sense of perhaps people are also getting a bit tired of elections. And this is towards the end of the year within an economic crisis situation, because you also think about the economics. A lot of people really are just looking for their daily bread and not necessarily about the election. So there is also that thing about these elections has not delivered good governance. Let's focus and get our daily bread. Because there's hunger in the land, there's still incidents of kidnapping going on. So there's that security war concerning within the state also. So if you put all of these factors, you can see these are perhaps contributory factors to the elections, and the politicians are not necessarily speaking on the issues the people want to hear about. And so we are not surprised to see this level of, I would say, more of lack of enthusiasm and low political tempo, because I think peace is good, and we like the fact it's calm, but it's just that excitement you see usually during elections. We're not seeing that in Ondo State.
Now, the unusual tranquility regardless, INEC had talked about certain flashpoints identified in the Ondo election. I wonder what your threat assessment and security assessment levels for Ondo in this particular election is saying, and perhaps if it will align with some of the things that the police commissioner has talked about in terms of provision of security, and maybe you could also provide some guidance for him, in your response. From what we know about Ondo, some areas like Ileowo in Owo local government and Akure South are usually flashpoints. Help us confirm if there's little to worry about from those areas for this particular election.
Yes, you mentioned Akure South. I was actually taking a look at our map because we identified different forms of threats. There is the one related to cults and kidnapping activities, which we observed in Ose local government, and then proliferation of small arms and light weapons and recruitment of thugs. We have seen that from our first reporting to the second reporting in Akure South and in Ondo East. And then also reports of political tensions in Irele. We have in Irele and Ilaje local government. And also if you go further up, you have in Akoko North East, Akoko South East, and Akoko Southwest. So these were some of the locations pre-election observations highlighted that we believe that the police should also look into, because we have to categorize the different security threats. There are some locations where it's just existing political tensions, but locations where we got reports about cultism or cultic activities related to cultist recruitment, which we do believe can also enable or be leveraged by political actors who want to create mayhem to leverage those as political thugs. And then issues around kidnapping, because that also has an impact on the elections. In fact, for some of those locations, you have reports of kidnappings within the farmland area, which is why you're also having farmers in some of the communities who are basically not going to farm anymore because of the fear of this security threat. And we do believe that the security, the police, as the CP has also mentioned, would have his own data, and they should plan accordingly, because for these elections, while it seems relatively calm, or that relative tranquility that we're experiencing, we also do not want to take things for granted. And we hope that the deployment will be done efficiently, especially in locations where there are reports of kidnapping. We do not want INEC officials to experience any form of threat to their lives as they deploy for these elections.
CP, you're the man in charge of security besides the ones that will be sent from the headquarters in Abuja and every other person that will be deployed across board. So let's begin with this issue on vote buying. The political parties have been bickering over the issue of vote buying. We can almost say that there will be vote buying, not because we're prophesying, but because we've seen these elections, the one that just happened in Edo State. There were issues of vote buying reported by civil society organizations as well as election observers. So what are you putting in place? Because vote buying is a crime. It just takes away the voice of the people, or the voice of the people to be able to freely exercise their franchise, more like buying them over at the end of the day. We can't explain enough what that means. So what is the police doing to ensure that is maybe not going to happen, or it's as minimal as possible, working with the EFCC?
Okay, thank you very much. Vote buying is a crime, and I can tell you that it is not activity that is done in the open. And vote buying most times does not happen during the election proper. Sometimes it is done before the election, but we are in conjunction with the ICPC and the EFCC in the state, working together. And of course, most of these vote buying are not done by physical card. It is done from our own assessment by transfer, electronic transfer. That is beyond the purview of the police to come about. But for the physical buying that will happen at the polling units, the officers that are deployed have been mandated. And in actual fact, we have conducted training to let them know that there are offenses that they need to look out for, which could compromise the integrity of the election. It is a fact that it happens, but we are on it to ensure that it doesn't have much impact on the electoral process. We had meeting with INEC, EFCC, and the ICPC, and in fact, the National Orientation Agency has been sent out to orientate the people against selling their votes and selling of their conscience and their ability to vote for a candidate of their choice, not based on the financial inducement that must have been given to them. Speaking frankly, we are on it, and I can tell you that if this happens at the polling unit or within the neighborhood of the polling unit, then they will be caught and they will be processed according to the extant laws of the land.
But CB, regardless of those assurances, we've seen time and again in past elections how police officers look the other way, when vote buying is going on in proximity to polling units, and even in fact in proximity to where the ballot box is stationed. So I wonder if your assurances will go so far, make any difference in this election. But relatedly, I want you to speak to us about what the force is doing to ensure the neutrality of police officers in this election. Has their welfare been taken care of adequately such that there would not be reports about acting in favor of any party in this exercise? CP, the question is for you, sir.
Okay, thank you. I want to speak to the issue of welfare of officers. The Inspector General of Police, IGP Kayode Adeolu Egbetokun, has, as I speak, asked for the account numbers of officers that will be participating in this off-cycle election, both within the state and those that have come to give us support. And I can tell you that both the officers, corps, and the men have been paid their dues, and they have no reason to be compromised by the stipends that will be given by politicians who may want them to do contrary to their professional calling. As regards the issue of police looking the other way, this issue forms the nucleus of the trainings that have been conducted to sensitize them that when an offense is being committed, they need to rise up to the occasion. The election is coming up in the couple of hours, and when you go around, you will see a change of attitude from old to new attitude towards doing that which is proper.
So what measures have been put in place to help observers who may want to report misconduct of the police to turn in easy reporting? And that's on the one hand. On the other hand, what's the allowance? Perhaps you could disclose that to us, that the police is making provision for 4 police officers who will be taking part in Saturday's exercise.
Okay, as at this moment, we have had meetings with civil society organizations, and precisely they have, those accredited have asked for opportunity to have a seat in our situation room, which will coordinate the activities of officers on the field. We have the situation room is going to be populated by security agencies representatives at the police headquarters, and with the representative of the CSOs at the situation room, it will create a seamless opportunity for them to report what is happening on the field. And the situation room affords us to have a real-time view of what is happening outside there, apart from the report that will be forwarded to the situation room, which the patrol teams that have been deployed to attend to emergency response in the polling units. Of course, you know that policemen and other security agencies that will be posted to the polling units will not be bearing arms. But the patrol teams that will respond to distress have been mandated whenever they are called, they should move in and do the needful. And in fact, this will give the movement of the police armed team will give a sort of confidence building to the officers that are posted and the people that are voting too, to be sure that their safety and security is assured.
Let's take it back to Cynthia. Cynthia, let's talk about INEC for a moment. I know your eyes are really on INEC, just like every one of us, which is quite critical, because we've always said that if we get the police and INEC right, a lot of the level of integrity of our elections will get better. And thank God the CP is here to speak on behalf of the security agencies. And you're here to also tell us what you're observing with INEC. We remember what happened in Ondo, that I'm sure will be a subject of litigation at the tribunal, and as far as the case can go, if it follows through, when it comes to collating election results, that's where we really, I think we are having a bit of an issue right now, where it was said that from the polling unit, I think it went straight to the ward and then skipped the local government. There's supposed to be a sequence. So walk us through the assurances you're seeing and getting from INEC as far as following through with their guidelines is concerned. In 2023 general election, we had issues with guidelines. And we've had issue with guidelines as far as this election. They set these guidelines and then something else happened. So it's always a concern for us. So what are you seeing? What assurances are you getting? And what will you be monitoring to see that it follows through?
INEC is an institution created by law, and we want to believe that because it's an institution created in the Constitution, that they would, at least for every election, make improvements in one, adhering to the law and to their guidelines, which you mentioned is they design and develop the guidelines. And so it's their document and it's their policies. And so one of the things we're hoping to see, based on the assurances from the stakeholders engagement that has happened, from the several meetings with INEC, because there's also the quarterly meeting that happens with the Electoral Commission in the headquarters in Abuja with TSOs. There's one with media and political parties. If we put all of the planning that we've gotten from INEC and the assurances from the Electoral Commission, we would say that INEC has provided information that they are ready for the elections. We've also observed deployment of both sensitive and non-sensitive materials. INEC had a mock accreditation to test the beavers in about 6 local government areas, which we observed in some local governments, the testing of the bimodal voter accreditation system. And so if we follow the planning, we can say that, yes, INEC is on course and it's implementing its activities based on its schedule of activities for the elections. However, as observer groups, we observe the elections based on, one, the Electoral Act provisions and the guidelines for elections. That is what informs how we design our checklist. And so for these elections, there are key aspects of the process that we're interested in. First, the voting process at the polling units, how the compliance rate is when it comes to the use of the beavers to accredit voters, and also the application of the rules on how voting happens, set up rules, set up issues, and professionalism of the electoral officials. And then after the voting process, the collation is key for us, because so far we've observed that the collation process is still one of the weakest links in our electoral process, especially as it relates to results management. Now, the rule provides that results move from the polling units to the ward collation centers. At the collation centers, there's computation of the results of the respective polling units for each ward collation center. So at the ward collation, there's computation, and there is review. Issues around overvoting is also done. There's a review that ought to happen there, because the rule is based on the Electoral Act. If there's overvoting, then the result for that polling unit ought to be cancelled, which is why you have the form EC40G that is completed for cancellation. Now, the ward collation, after review and computation is done, it ought to move to the LGA Results Collation Center. At the LGA Results Collation Center, what we expect to see is, based on the guideline, because INEC has its guideline for collation, that there's a review of the results from each ward. Complaints are also addressed there, and then there's computation of the results of each ward for that local government before moving from the local government results collation center to the state result collation center, where you have the final collation and announcement of results. Now, this is what we expect to see on Saturday, and we're hoping that the Electoral Commission would adhere to these principles. Now, one of the things we did set in Edo was, one, an integrity test for the Electoral Commission. And we did highlight that these elections, also in Ondo, will be assessed on 3 important tests for us. One, the electoral integrity test on the part of the Electoral Commission. The second, impartiality test for the security agencies. And third, the resilience test for the voters. Now, I would start with impartiality test for security agents, but we saw that undermined in Edo, and we're hoping that Ondo will have a different experience. And that is the level of impartiality of security agencies as it relates to one, managing and protecting personnel and materials from the polling unit to the collation centers, ensuring that they are not interfering with the process of collation, because we got reports of that interference at collation centers in Edo, and we're hoping we don't see that in Ondo, that there is no interference with the collation process by security personnel in this election. Their role is to secure the process. Both the INEC agents, media, and observers who are accredited to be at different levels of the results collation process. And so for us, impartiality on the part of security agencies will be assessed with one, their level of non-interference, their professionalism, and their cordiality in managing the process. Now, the electoral integrity test for us on the part of the Electoral Commission, we are looking at it from different perspectives. The first, for us, integrity requires compliance with the rules. So the level of compliance with the rules at every polling unit where we observe, and uniformity in application of the rules, the Electoral Act, and the INEC guidelines for elections. And for us, that is key. The second is the professionalism of the personnel deployed. Ad hoc officials at the polling units, how they are able to manage the process and provide the necessary support for voters at the polling unit level is key for us. Their professionalism, their dedication to the process, and the application of the rule. The other part of professionalism is the collation officers. Every level of collation, we expect the officials to stick to the rules. One of the things we've seen is because you don't have a lot of agents and observers at the ward collation, especially, and media, at that level, you have officials bypassing the rules of collation, and also at the LGA collation result collation center. So we're hoping that in this election, and I use the word hope because we really want to see an improvement in our process. We're hoping that in these elections, that the officials, the results collation officials, are clear on the rules, number one, that they understand the rules for collation, and they are applying the rules for collation at every level. And this includes, beyond the professionalism, the other part when it comes to the rules is the application of the margin of lead principle and the application of the rule on overvoting. Now, overvoting in the Electoral Act is clear. When you have the number of total votes cast exceed the total number of accredited voters, then there is overvoting. And this could even be by 1 or 2 votes. Now, the rule is when there is overvoting, the result for that polling unit is supposed to be cancelled or ought to be cancelled. And we want to see an application of the rule. Why do I say application? Because what we saw in Edo is that in some locations where you had overvoting, results were cancelled, but in other locations they were not. And so there is the need for clarity on what informs the cancellation, determination of overvoting in different polling units. If there's an application of the rule, we want to see that done based on the guidelines and not at the discretion of the officials. That's one. That way, you do not have arbitrary cancellation of votes for polling units and decision not to cancel even when there's clear overvoting. The other part is the margin of lead principle. And that is because the level of cancellation of ballots of polling units affects the margin of lead principle. The margin of lead principle, based on INEC rules, is that when you have the margin of lead between the two leading parties, if the margin is lesser than the number of voters that have collected their PVCs in polling units that were cancelled or polling units where elections did not hold, then a return cannot be made. Meaning that the level of one, polling units where voters did not vote, polling units where results were cancelled, the total number of PVCs collected in those locations are important. And that would determine if an election will be concluded or not. And so in the application of margin of lead principle, we are also expecting that the rules on overvoting applied diligently so that it informs a better application of the margin of lead principle. They are all interconnected, and these are important in ascertaining the integrity test, because at the end of the day, electoral integrity is not just about the outcome, it's about the process. If the process is not credible, it invalidates or raises questions on the outcome. And so for us, process and the results are important because they are interconnected, and that is what determines if an election has met integrity test and if voters can trust the process. And I clearly put this earlier, that is elections. The reason you're seeing lower interest is because when voters begin to lose faith in the electoral process, it affects their level of interest in the process, which is why we're seeing lower turnout. You saw Edo, we had lower voter turnout. We're also projecting a likelihood of lower turnout in these elections. And so for INEC, honestly, and the security press officials, this is an important election for them to re-inspire trust and faith in our electoral process.
Yeah, and I'm going to return to you on those very thorny issues that you raised about the integrity of the process, particularly from the time of collation of results to the presentation at the INEC office in the state. But let's come to the CP now. Again, CP, that concern about partiality or impartiality of security officials is coming up yet again from the observations of the election observers. I asked earlier, what is the figure of the allowance that is being provided for security officials, the police, that will guarantee their neutrality? I'd like you to speak to that and to so many other concerns that Cynthia has raised about the concerns of, security officials failing the impartiality test in the last election, and what assurances will be guaranteed that such will not repeat itself in this election on Saturday.
Okay, thank you very much. The issue of impartiality borders on unprofessionalism. And I can tell you that in this election, that is taken seriously. And also, for those officers that will be participating in this election, as a requirement of the Electoral Act 2022, which they are expected to administer oath of neutrality, and beyond that, we have our service codes, which every officer of the force is expected to observe. We have officers that will be going out to monitor the activities of police men posted to the polling units and the policemen that are supposed to be moving around the areas to ensure that the voters have some level of confidence to be able to go out to perform their civic responsibility. We take professionalism seriously, and any police officer who is found wanting professionally, his conduct would be called to question in line with the excellent rules guiding the force. And I hope you are also aware that the Police Service Commission have sent some monitors into the state to monitor the conduct of officers and men deployed for this election. In respect of the allowance you mentioned, which the police have provided, I don't know whether you are talking in terms of the monetary remuneration that have been paid to the police, or any other allowance as to how we are prepared to deal with menace of unprofessionalism.
Yeah, I'm talking about the allowance that the police has provided for officers in this particular election. And what guarantees are you giving us that no party is providing any other allowance to them for this particular election, such that their allegiance is not compromised?
Like I told you that the payment is straight to the account of the officers and men. I am not in position to tell you so much has been given to officers, but I can tell you that they have been adequately remunerated as prepared for in the budget preparation for the election.
Well, the question is important, CP, because in the past, opposition political parties had alleged that ruling parties made provision for allowance for police officers in governorship elections. But let me come to you now, Cynthia. Particularly, I'd like you to speak to the concern about the process of collation of results from polling units to the INEC collation center where a return will be made. Time and again, we've had this conversation about how that process is not open to the media. And, you know, in the most recent elections, we've heard about opposition parties alleging that, you know, other collation centers, other than the ones that we know, have been open sometimes in state government offices. What reforms would you propose to ensure that that is open to the media, that process is open to the media, to guarantee the integrity of future elections? And can we even say that even in this election, if that process is not transparent, that the election of this coming election, of the Ondo 2024 governorship election, can be guaranteed? Cynthia, that's for you.
Oh, sorry, I lost the first part. I had a, can you take it again? My network went off a bit.
Oh, okay. I'll take it again. The transportation of results from the polling units to the collation centers, to the ward, local government, and then to the INEC office where return will be made. Time and again, the conversation on that process has been the lack of transparency. And you, in fact, spoke to the concerns about professionalism of security agents and INEC officials. So what reforms would you propose to ensure that that process is as open as possible to guarantee its integrity? And if that cannot be guaranteed, even in this coming election, can we be speaking about integrity of this of the Ondo 2024 governorship election?
Yeah, I think for me there are three things. The first is the quality of training to, one, the security officials deployed during elections, and even the INEC personnel deployed. The quality of training is key, because if you do not train and deploy, if you don't deploy trained personnel, security personnel, and they understand their role, that their key function on elections day is to ensure security of the process and personnel and the material, then there would also be that reluctance to provide the adequate security, because, you know, the INEC can't move without the security. They need the security present to ensure the movement. So that's one part. The second of the training of security, but also the INEC officials also, because they also need to understand when to make demand, what kind of demands to make or during the process, and to inform or direct the security personnel on what to do. As simple as allowing accredited media and observers to be part of the process. There are times when security personnel are the ones asking people to leave, and the INEC officials are quiet. You're meant to say, oh no, these guys are accredited, they ought to be part of the process. Same also as party agents. That's one part. The second, for me, is when it comes to the transportation, is also the conversation that we have around understanding the routes and application of the routes. Because when it comes to the collation process, the transportation, I'm not looking at it from even the NURTW or the road transport, because I think at the point of collation, we have all of those things sorted. Usually at the commencement where we have delays when it comes to logistics. So for me, the second is the rules. When it comes to the result process, there is a clarity on how the results are to move from polling units to ward collation to LGA results collation to state for governorship elections. Right. That's the process. And so that's what we're expecting to see. And the third part for me is the attitude of the Electoral Commission to addressing issues raised during collation. And that is because the Electoral Act gives INEC the power in Section 65 to review results that are declared either involuntarily or declared in breach of the Electoral Act or the INEC's guidelines. The law is clear on this. But we've not seen INEC exercise its power. That's one. We've also not seen political parties make the right demands when it comes to results. And I'm hoping that for these elections, that political parties that have concerns about the results process would make a complaint officially to INEC and let us activate and test Section 65 of the Electoral Act. And that INEC would also uphold his own power and exercise that power under Section 65 to review results before declarations are made. I think we need to test these sections in the Act, especially when there are complaints with the results process.
Okay, Cynthia, very great point. I know that we waited for, I think, one election to be reviewed, a particular exercise, I think in Kogi. A particular one in Kogi, we're waiting for it to be reviewed. I don't think we saw the review. There were calls for review, I think even in Edo. I don't think we saw a review. So I don't know why INEC shies away from it, whether they feel that it will affect the outcome of the exercise, but just to build confidence to say, this is what happened, this is what we're reporting. I think it's going to go a long way. Cynthia Mbamalo is the Programs Director of Yaga Africa, joining us from Akure. She's on ground to follow up and monitor this exercise. Thank you so much, as well as the CP, the Commissioner of Police in Ondo State, CP Abayomi Oladipo, also joining us from Akure. CP, thank you so much for coming on the program as well.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay, we'll take a quick break now. When we come back, today is World Diabetes Day. We will be looking at that particular issue, as well as take a look at how it concerns Nigerians that are having this particular challenge in their health and what can be done in terms of intervention at personal, community, and government levels. Join us again.
Welcome back. And so today is World Diabetes Day, a day set aside to raise awareness on the chronic metabolic illness and how to advance the cause of access and affordable treatment and care for sufferers of that disease, diabetes. And joining us to have this discussion on the program is Dr. Ejiofor Ugu. He is the president, National President, Diabetes Association of Nigeria. Dr. Ugu, thank you so much for joining us amid so many challenges on your way today. Thank you very much. We do appreciate it.
Good morning. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Yes, it's an honor to have you too. Let's start with a theme for this year's celebration, which is breaking barriers and bridging gaps to lower the risks and ensure there is affordable and accessible treatment to all. How does that resonate with the community of patients suffering from diabetes, and how can it be deployed to further the cause of providing increased access and affordable care and treatment for patients?
All right, thank you very much. Just like you rightly pointed out, today is World Diabetes Day. This is a day set aside by the United Nations.
Oh dear, we'll have network challenges through to Dr. Ugu, but we hope that that can be resolved as soon as possible.
Talking about bridging the gaps, our patient-centered team that the International Diabetes Federation has ever brought out in the course of celebrating World Diabetes Day. Because all over the world, there are several
as
barriers
say,
to care. patients mellitus. And hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
and
we can.
Particularly in low and middle income countries like Nigeria. And I'll give you examples. In Nigeria, for instance, where we have a population of 6 to 8 million people living with diabetes, the access to care is highly limited, very, very limited. There are few diabetes specialists, I mean the specialists that we call endocrinologists, less than 200 endocrinologists to man a population of 6 to 8 million Nigerians living with diabetes. Is a far cry from what it's supposed to be. And most of these endocrinologists are concentrated in urban areas, in teaching hospitals, tertiary healthcare centers. So the rural areas and semi-urban areas are highly underserved. That's one of the problems. But even a more crippling problem right now is the high cost of diabetes care that has gone exponentially high beyond the reach of an average Nigerian. I'll give you an example. As at 2022 and early part of last year, a vial of insulin that used to cost about 4,000 naira has risen to 18 to 22,000 right now. Just one vial, one bottle of insulin. And this also applies to all other diabetes medications. I mean, the tablets, they supply the consumables like the glucose meters and strips and all that. So most patients in Nigeria now can no longer access care because of the high cost of care. And importantly, we also lack data. You know, there's no recent national survey to actually capture the accurate prevalence of diabetes in Nigeria and also to track the complications. So we are using projected figures from the International Diabetes Federation and then local studies by our local researchers, and that's not supposed to be. Nigeria is supposed to have a national policy on non-communicable diseases with strategic planning, and you cannot do that without having accurate data. Then another barrier to care, particularly in Nigeria, is essential medicines that are even going out of circulation because most of those drugs are imported. We have very few indigenous companies manufacturing diabetes medications. And some of those big pharma companies, you know, marketing these products are leaving the country. Some have left. And we have reliable information that a good number of them are planning to leave. So what is going to happen to the teeming population of Nigerians living with diabetes when these drugs become largely unavailable in the country? So as you can see, there are several barriers to care. One of them, too, is the low level of knowledge, awareness about diabetes, which is one of the things that the Diabetes Association of Nigeria, which I represent, is doing a lot to get to the nooks and crannies of this country, to create awareness about diabetes, and then break some of these cultural and religious barriers, myths, misconceptions that are making it difficult for people to access care. So these are some of the things that need to be addressed. And that is why the International Diabetes Federation, in their own wisdom, have decided to bring out the team for this year to make sure that patients have access to affordable and qualitative diabetes care. Thank you.
All right, I want you to speak again to that issue of the drugs or the medication. You said a bottle is about, is it a bottle you call it now? We used to be about 4,000.
Yes.
Yes. How many is needed per month?
Now, an average patient, we have different types of diabetes. So there are people who are solely on insulin, like patients who are suffering from type 1, and then some type 2 patients who are no longer responding to medication. So their life depends solely on that insulin. And just one injection, one vial of insulin is now costing between 18 to 22,000. And that patient will also be on other medications, all right? Antiplatelets, statins, some of them may be hypertensive. So the average cost of care for diabetic patients in Nigeria now is between 60 to 80,000 naira per month. How many people can afford it? What is the minimum wage? What is the unemployment rate in Nigeria? Very high. Look at the cost of inflation, the cost of food and every other thing. So it is making it very, very difficult for patients with diabetes in Nigeria to access quality care right now. And because of that, many of them have resorted to alternative medicines, prayer houses, native doctors, and all whatnot. And you can imagine the potential consequences. What we now see in hospitals is a high prevalence of diabetes-related complications. Diabetes is a systemic illness that can affect virtually every organ in the body. So people are coming with very high blood sugar not because they don't want to live, but because they don't have money to take care of themselves. All right. So, and people are coming with kidney damage is on the high, on the high side right now because of the lack of care. And then diabetic foot ulcers leading to amputations. If you go to hospital now, a lot of diabetic patients have their legs cut off because of what? Poor quality of care. And then people are getting blind. Diabetes is one of the leading causes of blindness over the world. Stroke is now everywhere. So these are the consequences and premature deaths. Every day diabetic patients are dying in Nigeria because of poor health care. No, we as an association, we have written federal minister. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. I wanted you to land on your thoughts before I do a follow-up question.
It's all right. Thank you very much. So I wanted to say that as an advocacy group, the Diabetes Association of Nigeria, which I represent, we're not just folding our arms. All right. We are doing everything possible to bring the attention of government, Nigerian government, to this ugly situation. So in January this year, we transmitted a letter to the Federal Minister of Health, informing them of the impending catastrophe that is befalling, the millions of Nigerians living with diabetes and pleading for an urgent action. That letter was received by the Federal Minister of Health on February 1st this year. We are still waiting for attention and we're doing follow-up visits. So I want to use the opportunity to plead with the Nigerian government to please treat this thing as a matter of urgency. Now, we have recommendations, suggestions that we have made to the government. For instance, I'll give you an example. HIV treatment in Nigeria is free. Treatment of tuberculosis in Nigeria is also free of charge. All right. But do you know that diabetes kills more people than HIV, tuberculosis, and even malaria combined together? Yet the cost of diabetes treatment is not even subsidized. So we are pleading with the federal government, so as a matter of urgency, to consider subsidizing diabetes care in this country. Because diabetes kills 30 to 40,000 Nigerians every year. This is worse than deaths from most other sicknesses that you can think of. So, and yet, the attention of government is not really, the government is trying, okay, but there are a lot that needs to be done. We also plead with the Nigerian government to consider total tax waiver on importation of diabetes medications and consumables. This will bring down the landing cost of these drugs, since most of them are not manufactured in Nigeria. And of course, that will translate to increased affordability of care. And then we also want this Nigerian government to set up stakeholders meeting, to set up a national diabetes strategic plan, a policy. If you go to many countries, for instance, in Egypt, once you are diagnosed to have diabetes, insulin is free. In ministry health hospitals, free insulin. All right. Nigeria has enough resources to consider this type of incentive for her citizens. So
Dr. Ugu, pardon me if I may come in there. It's a rather grim picture that you have paid about the condition of health of diabetic sufferers. And it's a good thing to also learn that you're not resting on your oars and you have, in fact, reached out to the Federal Ministry of Health. But, as we say, data is oxygen. So what data about, the increasingly difficult conditions of diabetic sufferers and the deaths that you have quoted, what data are you also presenting to galvanize action from the Federal Ministry of Health such that these interventions that you have provided, that you have suggested, can be acted upon with immediacy?
Data are everywhere. The only thing is that the data are, they are fragmented in the sense that data, they are coming from local sources from different parts of the country. I'll give you an example. I was a lead investigator to a multinational study that looked at the prevalence of diabetic foot ulcers and their outcomes in this country. It is probably one of the largest diabetic foot ulcer studies ever conducted in Nigeria. All right, the study took place in about 6 tertiary health institutions, and the outcome was an eyesore. All right, that study provided data, is online, anybody can Google it. It's called Multi-Center Evaluation of Diabetic Foot Ulcer in Nigeria, Medfund study. All right, that data provided, a very ugly situation for what is happening in the country because it cuts across, like I told you, it was a multi-center study that cut across every part of this country, the 6 geopolitical zones. And the amputation rate for patients living with diabetic foot, patients who have diabetic foot, was 33.5%. So what that means is that out of every 10 persons who develop diabetic foot ulcer in Nigeria, almost 4 of them have their legs cut off. All right? And this is a far cry from what happens in developed countries. In Australia, for instance, the prevalence of amputation is 0.1%. So which means if 10 persons present with diabetic foot, less than 1 person, all right, will have his or her leg cut off. Why? Because of several factors, including this poor quality of care. So, and this study has been replicated in many other parts of the country. All right. We also have studies on mortality, death rates. All right. So if you go to hospitals now and look at their death registry, you discover that diabetes is one of the leading causes of mortality in all the hospitals across the country. So we are not lacking data. It's just that, for instance, like I said, there's a need for a national, to collate all those data into a national working plan.
Exactly. The harmonization of these data that you have quoted, it's critical such that government can act. Just if you can speak to this in 30 seconds, that executive order that is meant to, remove tax from pharmaceutical products, has it kicked in, and how do you project that it will work to bring down the cost of pharmaceutical products for diabetic patients?
Yes, and if that order is implemented, it's going to help, all right? It's going to help, and like I said, it's likely going to reduce the cost of diabetes medications. However, that order has not kicked in. But there is also something I want to use this opportunity to let the federal government, to bring to the knowledge of the federal government, if you don't mind. In the last 2 years or thereabout, in June 2022, there was imposition of 10 naira per liter tax on sugar sweetened beverages, because one of the drivers of the diabetes epidemic in Nigeria and all over the world is high consumption of sugar sweetened beverages, unhealthy diet. So the Diabetes Association of Nigeria, in collaboration with other coalition agencies, made the federal government to start deduction of 10 naira per liter tax on sugar sweetened beverages in 2022. So as to increase the cost of those drugs, of those SSBs, and then discourage people from consuming them.
All right.
But as I'm talking to you now, that deduction has been stopped.
Has been stopped. Of course, that's an ongoing conversation, and
yes,
we've captured it. We've captured it on this set before, and we'll continue, to amplify it such that action can be taken. We are totally out of time, and we must thank you very much. Dr. Ejiofor Ugu is the National President, Diabetes Association of Nigeria. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And this is where we drop the anchor on this edition of the Morning Brief today. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back again tomorrow. I am Bukola Kuka.
Sunrise Daily is up next at the top of the hour. Thank you for watching. I'm Jeffrey Zama. Bye-bye.